And even just in the beginning of this book, Lottie is remembering her life in London in the year after the war, and she says, like everyone, I had little piles of sixpenny bits for the electric fire in my room, but even if I'd been able to afford to run it all night, it didn't provide much warmth. Well, there's tremendous debate about whether it should be sixpences, sixpenny bits, sixpenny pieces. And my American agent was originally British, and of course I have a British agent, I have a British editor. They all decided that sixpenny bits was right. And then the letters I got from readers in their 70s saying, how dare you try to write about London when you don't know the language, and everybody knows it would have just been sixpences, not sixpenny bits. And I'm thinking, that's just one phrase. Imagine if I tried to do a whole novel, what I would have been hearing.
You know, that's such an important point. Crime fiction readers have this kind of bond of trust with their authors. Sharon Penman and I, who also publishes with Putnam, were talking about this Tuesday night in the context of historicals, but it's true, I think, always that if you're drawing readers into a landscape that maybe they're not familiar with, if you knock them out, if one little detail goes wrong and they know it, you can knock them right out. Doesn't matter whether it's Sharon's medieval time or, you know, your 1940s London. Even today, if you were writing about Chicago, let's say you misrepresented the landscape for some reason, you know, put buildings in the wrong place, the reader just drops right out of where you intended them to be.
That's right. In my first book, I made a mistake just out of carelessness. I'm a huge Cubs fan. I won't say I live and die with them because I'm always dying with them. But in the first book, I had them on the wrong radio station. Just sloppiness. I had it set in my car just to hit that number, and I wasn't attending to what station it was. I had a letter, my first letter ever from a reader. She photocopied the page and she said, everybody knows it's the station it is instead of the one you said it is. And from now on, whenever I see a mistake by a living author, I'm going to write and tell them, and you are the first. I thought, okay.
So is reader feedback something you enjoy? Do you learn from it?
I love getting letters, and now mostly emails, of course, from people who grew up in Chicago, and often they've moved away. They're like you. They feel nostalgic for the city, and they'll tell me amazing and wonderful things about their experiences. I feel like I always learn from criticism if it's presented in a positive way. Too often people, especially on the web, people think that they can say anything, and they'll say it in the nastiest way possible, and of course that's a turnoff to me. But if I've made a mistake, or if there's something odd or awkward about a book, and someone can write me about it in a kindly way, I do learn from it.
I was thinking last night when I was listening to a couple of your fans making tributes to you that, you know, to me it would have been worth coming on the whole trip just for that moment.
You're absolutely right. I was thinking the same thing. I heard from a woman who had been a prison chaplain for 30 years, and I wrote a book, Hard Times, set in the world of women in prison. It was a hard book to write. I put VI behind bars. I made her powerless. It was painful to me because I spent too much of my life being powerless. She's the person who stands out there for me and keeps me from being helpless. And so to let her be helpless was probably the most difficult writing emotionally that I've done. But this woman said that for her clients, having an advocate and knowing that somebody was aware of them was a real boon and a lifesaver. And I did think, listening to that, I've spent almost a month on the road. I'm exhausted, I'm brain dead. I have a month's worth of mail that I know I have to answer when I get home, so I don't even want to go home and look at it. But I thought it was worth it to come and know that my books have spoken to women who have no voice.
And writing them is basically a solitary act, right?
It has to be a solitary act. You have to get very interior and very quiet to write. At least I do.
So perhaps coming out and the direct feedback from the reader that you can't get during the process is a good thing.
I love events with readers. I mean, I find them energizing, and because it is a lonely occupation, it's where you meet people. I always hear some life story that I would never have known otherwise. It's the travel and doing it all at once that I can't deal with. If I could, and of course you can't, you have to do it all at once because that's when the book is out, but you know, if I could do a couple of events a month and spread it out over a year, it would be great because it would be just enough contact and
well, it wouldn't be exhausting.
Right.
It would be energizing, and
right.
yeah, it's too bad that
yeah.
I often feel the same way. I feel the same way when I have a week with 5 or 6 authors coming,
yeah.
and I wish that I could space them out unless people are going to bring a sleeping bag and just
right.
kind of hang out at the store. They have to make choices, and I really dislike the overbooking that you tend to get in key periods, and a lot of that has to do with media and holidays and how people work. You can't get anyone on the road from Thanksgiving till the middle of January, for example, and then you get a huge crunch of people that come at the end of January, and I hate that. It's not fair to the authors, and I think it's very hard on readers, you know, who then can't see everyone they like. But anyway, that's the way it is. So what did you do in the years when you were a new writer and probably needed to have a day job?
I was a marketing manager for a big insurance company in Chicago. You know, I'm so glad that I no longer have to try to persuade a personnel office that my resume really all dovetails, because I was a sleepwalker. I had no career direction.
Well, it wasn't what you wanted to be doing.
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to be doing. I had grown up in this kind of milieu where girls became mommies, and if you didn't marry right away, you were a secretary. Remember when Yale had first admitted women and alumni were canceling their pledges, and Kingman Brewster wrote this article, the president of Yale, for the New York Times Magazine, saying that women went to college to become better wives and mothers, and Yale was only letting them in to make the best wives and mothers possible. And it's like, and those women were conducting sit-ins and doing all that stuff.
But see, I graduated from New Jersey in 1958 and went on to Stanford before anything really changed, and that was certainly my expectation, that I was going to college to get a, quote, good general education. And then, you know, and the truth is that a really good general liberal arts education doesn't leave you with any real practical skill. Like you, when I graduated from a fine university with a great degree, I was a secretary for a while because it was the only real skill that I had. I was still into that. I'm supposed to be getting married and, you know, didn't know. I mean, I had 3 different career paths, and I didn't even start the first one until I was in my 30s.
And no, my parents, they were incredibly civil rights activists in a town that was had some pretty ugly racial baggage, but they were very traditional about girls. I had 4 brothers who were sent to college. I was sent to secretarial school, and they both hoped that I would stay home and look after them. That was what they really wanted for me and from me.
This isn't a purely American thing. I don't know if you know Susan Moody, the crime writer.
We've met. I don't know her well.
Well, she lives in Oxford, and she is the daughter of a very distinguished Oxford Don, and I think I have this right. She has 4 brothers, maybe 3. Anyway, it was absolutely assumed that the brothers would all go to university and whatever, and it was never assumed. Susan was not ever a candidate to do that. She was treated completely differently as the daughter, and resents to this day that she wasn't, you know, able to do that.
It's one of the great changes of the last 20 years that, you know, the young women coming out of high school now, however confused and baffled they may be, they do know that they don't even think of it as a right. They take it for granted that their lives have social meaning and that they can make choices about what to do with them. I think it's wonderful. I love it.
And they think career or work, really, not career so much as work. You know, I sometimes think, aren't we lucky that you and I, who sort of bumbled around from this, finally found our voice, so to speak.
I know.